15 years ago, people had no idea what tequila was made from. There was just really one big brand. There was no others. And it was really something where people had those terrible memories from college of what, tequila would, and they say, oh, I don't really drink tequila. And then you've got all these like young people in their 20s who grew up drinking, like where they were like, when they were first tasting tequila, they tasted good tequila. So they don't have, I feel like, the same memories that our generation does. And so our generation had to try good tequila and realize, oh wow, I never tasted good tequila. This stuff is wonderful. And so, but I do think the US is moving along quite quickly with it. And the rest of the world, to me, is just like a really, it's untapped right now for tequila, because most of the rest of the world has had sort of bad, cheap tequila, and they haven't as much had sort of the same great access to tequila. I think probably because the US is so close to Mexico. We've latched on, and a lot of Americans travel to Mexico and they taste good tequila, and then they come home and then they search for it. And so, but there's still a lot of education, and we love that fact. We love that fact. And we're lucky at Terramana because our founder, obviously Dwayne Johnson, we call him DJ for short, but he has such a passion for tequila. So he wants to talk about it, and he wants everyone to know like how you make good tequila. And I don't know, he's like a kid in a candy store with it. He just loves talking about, how you find the agave and the brick ovens and the copper pot stills. He gets really into the details. And it's amazing to see a founder who cares so much about the process and that education. And he's probably the best person in the world to educate on tequila, right? Because he's I think the most followed man in America on social media. So, and everyone loves him. So it's hard not to sort of fall in love with the story when he's talking about the Terramana story.
Definitely. So every so often you're really jigging. I don't know if you're knocking the computer when are you leaning or something?
Maybe.
It's fine, but it's just every so often it's doing a little bit of a.
Probably because I'm at one of these tables that desks that go up and down. So
it's fine, but just be aware. Yeah, just be aware of it. It's every sort of it's wobbling. But yeah, you're right. Like I think everyone listens. And actually, I did a few interviews yesterday, and that talking about like the celebrity endorsement in the US, they were saying that they really feel that's helped. It has helped educate people and make people more interested to see, because they're like, oh well, if they're drinking it, then it's obviously is a cool drink to drink, which I think is having an impact internationally too.
It does.
Definitely. So where did your kind of journey begin with tequila? How did you kind of find yourself in this position?
It's funny. I grew up working in restaurants, and so I always loved the hospitality industry, and really just enjoyed it. And one of my jobs to put myself through college was working at a Mexican restaurant in San Antonio, Texas, on the Riverwalk called Rio Cantina. Sadly, it's not there anymore, but just a really a fun place. And so that's where I first learned about tequila and tried real tequilas that were coming up from Mexico and things that were really good, and loved it. And then sort of fast forward throughout my career, I always just loved the wine and spirits business. And one day I got to run a large champagne company, and at the time it wasn't a large champagne company, but we brought it back to life. And that was Dom Perignon. And we also did a lot of other champagnes and wines, and really I loved that. But I funny enough was drinking champagne, wine, and tequila, and those were sort of my things. And my business partner today, we met through a friend, and he was going down to Mexico, and he was a huge tequila lover. And so he was meeting with these different families in Mexico and trying to figure out what's the best way to make tequila. And he had this real passion to make it. And so I ended up leaving my day job at LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, to help him start a tequila company. And we had a great time doing that for about 10 years, a little bit more. And we sold that. And then we ended up, Dwayne Johnson he was such a tequila lover. He was talking about, he's been talking about tequila, I feel like, for over a decade. And you ask him, you're like, so why are you so passionate about tequila? And for him, he said, when I was growing up, for our family, if something great was happening, we'd get together and people would have tequila. But also he's like, if something bad happened, we still get together and have tequila. And he's like, so for me, it's about like this togetherness. And he said, I always sort of had this dream, but I didn't know if I'd ever be able to make it a reality. And so Ken Austin, my business partner, and myself worked with DJ and his business partner, Danny Garcia, for years to really figure out how to do this the right way. Because when you're dealing with someone like Dwayne Johnson, he only does stuff the right way. Like for him, he really cares about the people, the story, the sustainability, and he asks so many questions. And so for us, the due diligence was immense, but luckily we had been in the business for, over 10 years in tequila, and we knew some wonderful folks down in tequila. And so he really cared about, let me meet the people, because he's like, I really want to make sure that I'm not just being some big corporate brand. I want to make it about the people. And so we introduced him to this one wonderful family who has one of the few family-owned distilleries left in Mexico. And they just hit it off, and he loved their thought process on one of their reasons they do this is they think about keeping employment in their community. And so they really care about sustainability, because they're saying, all right, we want to have this employment, not just for today, but for our grandkids, and make sure that we're taking care of the land. And so that really resonated with him. And so there are partners in the business. So they're in it with us. They own part of the company with us, which is just really wonderful to have partners like that in Mexico. And so it's just, it's just one of those things where it's nice because you've got this experience and you have these people that you can pull from. And when you've got a partner like Dwayne Johnson, like he just is not in it for the quick. He's not in it for a quick turn. He's in it for the long, long haul. And so it's nice because you can take your time. You can do things the right way. No one's rushing you to cut corners at all. It's really saying, okay, like, how do we do this the right way? How do we bring to the consumer a fantastic tequila? And so we worked our butts off on that. And he did too with the master distillers. And then we make this great tequila, handcrafted, small copper pot stills. And he said, so what would this normally retail for? And we're like, yeah, over $40. And he said, okay, I want to be then 30, no more than 30. And we just all looked at each other and we're like, oh, okay, but we're really not going to have much of a margin. And he's like, that's fine. He's like, I want to introduce people to great tequila, and I want them to understand that you don't have to pay an astronomical price for great tequila. And I have to say, that has been such a phenomenal decision, because both consumers as well as restaurateurs, bartenders, there's such an appreciation for that, because they can serve to their friends and family or to their customers an ultra premium tequila, but they're not having to pay that exorbitant price.
Yeah, I think that's interesting about the pricing, because you do a premium tequila is more expensive than say a premium gin or a premium vodka, but I think a lot of people are unaware of the time, the effort, what goes into tequila is such I'm surprised it's not more expensive in a way. And I think everyone also has to be aware that if you do undercut, you're basically putting stuff in there that's not good quality, and then then you've got the sustainability thing. So it's a very delicate balance, isn't it, of what do you say to people who say, God, tequila's just so expensive? How do you kind of make them understand what goes into it?
You're so right. It's interesting because you can't make tequila the right way really cheap. You just can't. To your point, you're doing it the wrong way. You're not ensuring that you're paying people the right wages, that you're taking care of the environment, that you're doing all the right steps. So it is an expensive process. One, because your agave it's got to be in the ground for 5 to 7 years, sometimes 8 years. And that itself is a really long time frame to be expending cash and waiting. And then the process itself is really hand intensive if you do it the way we do. And even just like copper pot stills, they're expensive to make. And there's only a couple guys who can make small copper pot stills in Jalisco. And so it's of art form, I would say. And so that's why it is so expensive to make, because I feel like it's different than other spirits. Like you think about a whiskey, like your aging comes at the end, ours sort of comes at the beginning with the agave growth, if you will. So it's really, it's a special product. I think it's sort of that mix of like art and science, if you will.
And I think, coming on some of the myths, I mean, people say to me, but all tequila kind of is the same. Like, I don't like tequila. And I think a lot of people are unaware that you can get reposados. Like, it's not all the same. And that's another thing that I find it frustrating, because, I've converted people by giving like male friends of mine like a neat sipping tequila, but like a reposado. And they're like, oh, this is, yeah, I can drink this. So I think that's a big myth that we have to overcome, is like all tequila is the same.
It's so true. You find like your friends who are whiskey drinkers, when you give them the reposado, they're like, oh wow, like this is so interesting, and they love it. And I mean, and also you get these incredible flavors. It's got a great story about the provenance and where it comes from, if it's made the right way. And then you're also, I don't know, at Terramana, we love the fact that like, while the tequila is pretty serious, like we just want people also just to get together and enjoy life. And tequila allows you to do that. You don't have to take yourself seriously. I feel like with whiskey, sometimes you have to take yourself a little bit too seriously and think about it. With this, you don't necessarily have to, but it is really different. Like even the Blancos, our Blancos, the Terramana's got like these really nice sort of lemongrass light notes, because we're roasting at a lower temperature. And it's fun to have those differences. And also Terramana is a highlands tequila, which has got a different flavor profile than a lowlands tequila too. So you're spot on. It's very different. And I think it's fun. It is a little bit like wine, because it's a lot about how the terroir and what the earth is like in that area.
And I think, another myth is that, oh no, it makes me feel terrible. It makes me feel terrible. I can't drink tequila. It's, and I think, and I think that's interesting with Dwayne Johnson being involved as well, because he is someone that we know is very health conscious. And I'm not saying drinking is healthy. We all know it's not, but, there is a difference between the qualities of things that you put in your body in terms of alcohol. And what is it about tequila that, what do you say to people who say, oh no, that gives me a terrible headache, it's awful?
Well, they're drinking the wrong tequila then. Well, that they're probably drinking a mixto, or they're drinking a cheap tequila. And it's funny because DJ asked us, he said, well, why don't spirit brands put nutritional facts on the back of their bottles? And we said, it's a great question. Probably because people are adding stuff to it and they don't necessarily want to share that. And so what we did on the back of ours, because of DJ, is we wrote the exact process, like how it's made. So the agave is 100% the Blue Weber Highlands. And then you see that it's all brick oven, copper pot stills. And then we put in calories, carbohydrates, like sugar. So you see that you've got 0 carbohydrates, 0 sugars, certified like gluten-free, like all of those things. So if you're someone who cares about what you're putting in your body, DJ really wanted to be totally transparent. And so at Terramana, we take a lot of pride in that transparency.
Yeah, which I think is really good. And, as I said, we're not condoning that alcohol is good for you, but I think I know if I drink a good tequila with soda for the night, I will feel a lot better than if I drink, a mixture of whatever out of a bar. It definitely is true. So
it's true. And that's one of my favorite drinks. Yeah. If you just I love a Terramana reposado with soda, and sometimes a squeeze a lime if I've got a lime around. If not, no, but it's just so light and refreshing and easy.
And what do you think, like in terms of innovations and different expressions that we're seeing across the sector, is there some exciting things happening just generally in tequila? Do you think there's more experimentation? Are people being able to have more fun with it now? Are you noticing that as a, across as a whole?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, I see some, not a lot. I don't see it like you saw sort of the vodka innovation where people are doing flavors and such. I feel like it's almost, or at least from sort of our vantage point, people now want to care more about the provenance and the story. So they're looking more into that. And then of course, they're interested in, okay, like how are you aging it? What are you aging it in? And there's so many fun things you can do with that. And at Terramana, we've been playing with a lot of different things. And so DJ gets to taste from the barrels, different Terramana blends that we're working on. And so eventually in the future, we'll be able to do some of that. But right now we're really, because we only launched a little over a year ago. So Terramana is just a baby. And so we've got a lot of things in the barrels, but we're taking it really sort of the old school traditional approach and not launching with everything, because we really want to make sure it's ours and it's done the right way.
Are you seeing like which markets are you merging into, and what are the biggest tequila markets outside of like the US and Mexico? I don't actually know. I know I think I
Yeah,
think
so
UK is like
US.
7 or something.
Yeah, and well, the US and Mexico make up the lion's share on tequila. The rest of the world is not there yet. But Canada, it's interesting. We just launched Canada a couple months ago, and it has been a tremendous reception. So the Canadians are definitely jumping on board the tequila train. I do think the UK, Australia, the amount of emails we get from the UK and Australia saying, "When are you bringing Terramana here?" Germany as well. And so there's, I think, a lot of opportunity. We get notes like every day from different countries saying, "Hey, when can you bring it in?" But I would say UK, Australia are sort of some of the top two. We have a challenge at Terramana where, because of the way we make it, we can only make so much so fast, because we don't have enough copper pot stills to make a indefinite amount. So we're right now building new brick ovens, building new copper pot stills, and we're trying to make sure that we cover the United States, Mexico, and Canada, North America first, before we expand. And so as we build the capacity up in that right way, then we're looking forward to expanding to some of the other countries, because we know that they're excited about it. And it's fun because they'll be able to learn about tequila and be educated on it in a way that probably never before, because of DJ.
Yeah, and also, have you noticed? I mean, I'm interviewing, and now it's completely escaped me which tequila blend this is, but she's like fourth generation Mexican family. It's a family recipe, and she, it was her father, her grandfather, her great grandfather. She's the first woman in a long chain of people who's now, she's only like sort of early 30s, who's taken over. Have you noticed that there is more? I mean, obviously, it was much more male orientated back in the day, but are you noticing more women going into the tequila section? It seems. I mean, I think in terms of drinkers, a lot more women are drinking it as well. I don't know. I just wondered how you feel about that side.
Yeah, I would say for drinking, we think it's 50-50 on the drinking. And there are luckily more women getting into the business from the distillery and business side, but still too few. We need a lot more. We've got on our master distiller team, we have a woman distiller who's just fantastic and young. And but most of them are like, everyone sort of, what we're trying to do is make sure we bring the young women in so that they can really grow up in it and learn about it, because quite frankly, for the older generations, it wasn't really an open door. So I think there's too few, and there's still too few, but it's all of our jobs to encourage women to get into the business and know more. And I selfishly think women have a great palate for tasting, and in tequila, it's really important to have that palate and taste and understand what's going on with your distillation and your batches. So yeah, we hope to see more, and it's neat to hear that story when you've got someone like that.
Yeah, I think so. And also, I just wonder what's going to happen, because obviously the demand is expanding. There's more brands coming up, but there is limited. Sustainability is so important. How are we going to keep that, and how are we going to stop people coming in and just taking shortcuts and ruining the ecosystem? How do we work together to stop that happening?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges right now are people harvesting not mature agave, because we want to make sure that people are harvesting mature agave, and then that they're giving the land the time to rest as well. So it's we've got the different bodies that oversee tequila, and it's really important to work with them to make sure that's the case. At Terramana, we make sure that we know who's growing our agave, that we're doing it the right way. And water is really important too, because water, obviously you need it for distillation, and some distilleries are not taking care of their wastewater in the way they need to. And so we've built a state-of-the-art water filtration plant, and so we're making with the family and making sure that all of our water is treated, as well as we're using all of the leftover agave fibers to put them back into the land. We use those as fertilizer. But the demand itself is interesting, because there's a good amount of land, and it's the tequila sort of plantings go up and down in a cycle based on sort of the price. So if the price is really high, everyone plants agave plants, and then the price goes low, which is not great for anyone. It's really better for the farmers to have long-term contracts so that they're not going boom or bust, that everyone is, making a good wage and everyone feels good about it. And so for us at Terramana, that's our philosophy, is to figure out and make sure that we're doing things in sort of a very long term versus short term. And I think we encourage everybody to think about it that way so that you don't have the issues that you're talking about.
Yeah. And if someone comes to you and says, oh, I only like to shoot my tequila with like a slice of lemon and a bit of salt, how do you tell them they should be like, what would you advise people to do in terms of taste it, how to properly taste a tequila, and what should they be doing?
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, I don't know. I always feel like I'm not best at at hiding my facial expressions. So when they say that, I'm like, oh, don't do that. But if you're tasting Terramana, like our belief is you want to smell it, you want to taste it, and just sort of understand what that great fresh roasted agave flavor is, because you're really tasting the land and that agave plant, and it's wonderful. And then it depends on what your preference is. Some people love to sip, others love cocktails. And so I would say like our favorite one that seems to be the favorite here in the United States is the People's Margarita, which is Terramana Blanco. Sorry, I've got a fire truck going past New York City. Terramana Blanco agave nectar, fresh lime juice.
Again, can you just start like from the margarita again? Just because.
Yeah, give me a second, because I'm assuming they're going to go by or turn.
It's got a bit quieter. It's better. It just went very loud as you began the margarita bit. So my house is the same. I live like, I've got a main road right next to me, and they like hurtle up and down. It's crazy.
Sorry.
It's fine now. I think I can't really hear it anymore.
You can hear? Okay, good. I can still hear it.
I can now. It's going crazy. Okay.
All right, so back to the cocktail. So the People's Margarita, Terramana, fresh lime juice, agave nectar, and a splash of pineapple juice. And it's just a really easy, fun, light, fresh cocktail. We really believe in you only use fresh ingredients. Oh my God,
it's just fated not to happen. This margarita recipe is going to remain.
I know. Sorry, I'm the only one at the office, so I've got to grab the door. This is the whole thing about working, and give me 1 second. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
This is the hazards of this whole,
Yeah, it's fine.
Whole thing. I hope you're able to edit this thing.
Oh yeah, don't worry. Yeah. It'll be very heavily edited.
I'm like, if not, it's like a comedy of errors.
No, it's fine. I can't. Should we just go through the margarita recipe again? So I feel like...
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah,
all right. So the favorite right now is the People's Margarita, which is Terramana, fresh lime juice, agave nectar, and a splash of pineapple juice. And it's super simple, very fresh, because we believe in only using fresh ingredients. Because if you're going to make a good tequila, you don't want to mess it up with ingredients that are not delicious and fresh. So that's the best one right now that people are just loving. But you can make it, it's just really however whatever your taste profile is, because I also find that you can make a great old fashioned as well with the reposado, which is fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there what are the trends sort of currently in the bars, and what are people doing with tequila that they maybe haven't before? Where's it, are you seeing different uses for tequila in cocktails and things like that?
I would say the biggest difference I'm seeing right now is that people are drinking it or sipping it straight or on the rocks. And then in terms of cocktails, it's fun because I do think people are having a good time with just fresh juices, be it like, throw in a lemonade or a fresh squeezed orange juice with it. And I think that it almost is like what vodka used to be. People are like, oh, let me throw in a tequila instead. And so you get this really nice, I think, more interesting, deeper layered flavor, but you can do about anything with it. It's so versatile. And I think in the old days, you didn't think tequila was versatile. You're like, okay, I can only drink it as a margarita. But today you can use it for so many different cocktails, and it's fun to experiment. If it's even a Bloody Maria, to doing something that's like an old fashioned, or something that's just really light and refreshing, like a Terramana soda.
Yeah, I think that's what, when people come to my house and they say they want a gin and tonic, I'm like, try a tequila and tonic. And because they're kind of like familiar with part of that and they kind of know that type of drink. And then they're like, oh, okay. And then they're usually like, oh yeah, it's really nice. But I think, you know, the fact that you can use it to replace pretty much anything you would in another drink. And I just think people don't think of it for some reason. It just doesn't feature as a thought. So then, you know, from there, they're like, oh yeah.
It's so true. One of my favorite mixologists, Chris Patino, he made this recipe called the Terramana two-step, and it's so easy. It's Terramana, tonic water, 3 splashes of grapefruit bitters, and then he just puts in just like a twist of any citrus you've got, lime, grapefruit, orange. It all works, and it's such a delicious cocktail, and it's so easy.
Really easy. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was Paul McCartney, and he says he makes a macarita, which is basically his version of a margarita, and he uses a bit of orange juice. And so he says when he goes to a bar, he says, make me a margarita, but put a dash of orange juice in it. It's funny.
It's good. Yeah, no, it's fun. So I feel like now there's almost this, you know, people used to be scared of tequila, and now it's freeing. I feel like they've got this freedom to do whatever with it. And I think I don't know, it just, if you're using Terramana or great tequila, it just, I don't know, it just makes it a lot more fun and you feel good.
That's great. Well, that's a perfect place to end. That's brilliant. Really, really, really nice to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it.
No, it's great.
And I'm glad I'm glad you're writing a myth busting on tequila.
Yeah, well, I just think, especially in the UK, and I think so, everyone's constantly surprised every time. And that's all I really drink. And people are like, what? Like they just, even in bars, even bartenders still in the UK, sometimes, you know, it's getting better. But I find some of them are, you know, what, you want a tequila with soda? And
well, they don't know what it's made from. I feel like too, is like, that's where it's interesting, is